Hi viewers, here we will discuss about K-means clustering algorithm example. Uh, Brief about a K-means clustering algorithm. The input is n number of samples in the given input data, and we have to give the number of clusters K value as a input. Expected output will be K number of clusters. Now, first initially we have to give the input K. So based upon the K value, the number of K data points should be selected as a initial cluster centers. Then for each data point, we have to calculate the distance between the data point and remaining cluster centroids. Then this data point, suppose if I have this is the data point here, I am having the cluster centers 1 and 2, the whichever distance is close to this cluster center, so this is the data point. So data point which the distance is whichever is distance is low, then this data point assigned to that cluster. So like that we have to do it for all the data points in the given data set. Then after forming the clusters, then we have to calculate the mean of this cluster members distance, then whichever member is having the value, then that cluster member is selected as a new cluster center. That's our mean value will be selected as a new cluster center. Then again we have to go back to second one. So to that new cluster center, suppose if I get the new cluster center somewhere here, then to this new cluster center we have to calculate the distance, right? We have to calculate the distance to all the data points. Then to the current data point, whichever cluster center is closed, then assign to that cluster. So like that we have to repeat until convergence criteria. What is the convergence criteria? The cluster members should not move from one cluster to another cluster. That is one criteria. Then another criteria, cluster centers should not change. So until this we can keep on do the process. And third one, maximum number of iterations. So until that we can keep on do the process. Now, I am taking one problem statement. My data set is having four number of samples. That samples are belonging to the medicines. That samples are having two attributes. One is the weight and another one is the pH index. This is the serial number, right? My input K value is 2. That means I want to make two clusters from this given data set. Initially, I am making into the plot. Here this A is 1 comma 1 1 comma 1, and B is 2 comma 1, and C is 4 comma 3, D is 5 comma 4. After this, first one I have to select initial random data points as a cluster centers. Okay, so for that I am selecting a and b as a cluster centers, k equal to 2. So two data points are selected as a cluster centers randomly. Now I am calculating the distance by using the Euclidean distance metric. So here a to a, first I am calculating the distance a. So here it will distance will be 0. Then a to c and a to b and a to d. So here for this a to a 0, a to b you will apply the Euclidean distance, you will get the 1, a to c 3.61, and a to d 5. The like that the cluster centroid 2. So this is the cluster centroid 2. From this you have to calculate b to a, b to b, then b to c, and b to d. So b to a you are getting the value 1, b to b you are getting the value 0, b to c 2.83, b to d 4.24. Now we have to assign the data points to whichever center is close, whichever center is close. For that, you look at that, this is the data we have calculated, distance calculated with respect to A. This second row is calculated the distance with respect to center B. Now from this 0 and 1, so 0 is the lowest value. So this A is assigned to the cluster A. Okay, cluster 1, I am saying cluster 1. So A is assigned to cluster 1. Then next one, among this both, 0 is the lowest. So 0 belongs to B. So in the cluster 2, B is assigned. Then look at that 3.61 and 2.83. 2.83 is minimum value, right? So this is the C actually. The C is assigned to the group B. C is assigned to the cluster center which is corresponding to B. Then 5 comma 4.24, among this two value 4.24 is the lowest value. So this data point D is assigned to the group B. So now we have formed C1. Cluster 1 is having the only one data point A. Cluster 2 is having three data points B, comma C, comma D. You look at that. So in this plot, A is having only one data point. The cluster 2 is having three data points. Cluster 2 is having three data points. Now one iteration is over. Then we have to calculate the mean. We have to calculate the mean of this cluster members. Mean of this cluster members. This is the C2. This is C1. So first we are calculating the mean of cluster member 1. 1 comma 1, that is mean will be again 1 comma 1. So 1 by 1 comma 1 by 1. So we will get the 1 comma 1. Then the cluster 2, we are having three data points. So this is x1, this is the x value, this is x2. Okay, so 2 plus 4, second data point 4, this is data point B, this is data point C, this is data point D. Then x1, this is B, this is C, this is D. So three data points. So 2 plus 4 plus 5, number of data points 3. Here also x2 feature 1 plus 3 plus 4, number of data points 3. So which is taking as a average mean. So we are getting 11 by 3, 8 by 3. Now so the 11 by 3 is approximately, which is maybe a 3.8. 3 or 8 by 3 will be 2.6. So now this is the cluster center 2 that is mentioned here. You look at this star. This is the new cluster center in the cluster 2. So in the cluster 2 we are getting the new center. In the cluster 1, same is acting as a center. Again, iteration number 2, we are calculating the distance to all the data points. So again we are giving, this is the cluster 1, this is cluster 2. So this is data point A, B, C, D. So A to A. Okay, the distance between A comma A 0. Then distance between A comma B 1. The distance between A to C 3.61. The distance between A comma D 5. Like that, in the cluster 2, so this is the cluster center 2. Okay, that value is here approximately 3.8 comma 2.6. So based on that, you have to calculate the distance. So B to A 3.14, B to this cluster center. Okay, this cluster center C2A 3.14, C2B 2.36, C2C, right? This C2 to this C, data point C 0.47, C2 to D, this is C2 to D, this is C2 comma C, this is C2 comma B, this is C2 comma A. So now we are getting these values. So among these values, now you look at that, in this 0 comma 3.14, which is the lowest value, 0 is the lowest value. So that 0, this data point A is assigned to cluster 1. Data point A is assigned to cluster 1. Then this 1 comma 2.36, 1 comma 2.36, so 1 is the minimum value, so B is assigned to cluster 1. Then when you are taking the data point C, 0.47 is the minimum value. 0.47 is the minimum value. So that is assigned to cluster 2. Cluster 2, right? Then among the 5 comma 1.89, so 1.89 is the minimum value, so 1.89 belongs to C2, so D is assigned to the C2. Now we have formed the B comma A, B and A will be one group, C and D will be one group. Again, we have to calculate the mean between these cluster members 2 and these cluster members 2. That's what you look at that. This is x1 feature, x2 feature. So first data point 1 plus second data point x1, okay, by 2 number of data points in the cluster 1. Then first data point x2 value, second data point x2 value divided by number of data points. So when you are calculating that, you will get the 1.5 comma 1. So this is the 1.5 comma 1, right? Next C2, again C2 we are having the C comma D. So here you are applying the calculation, then you are getting 4.5 comma 3.5. So 4.5 comma 3.5 is the new cluster center C2. Again repeat the same process, calculate the distance between all the data points, so when you are getting the data, calculating that, so this is C1, C2, this is A, B, C, D data point. So among the 0.5 comma 4.30, 0.5 is the minimum, so A belongs to cluster 1, A belongs to cluster 1. Then 0.5 comma 3.4, so in this 0.5 is the minimum, so B assigned to the cluster 1. Then next one 3.2, here 0.71, here 0.71 is the minimum distance, so it is assigned to the C2, so C2 will be having the data point C, right? Among these two distance, 0.71 is the minimum, so this is the data point D. Data point D is having the minimum distance, that means close to the cluster center C2, so D is assigned to the cluster center 2. So again now assigned, again we have to calculate the new cluster center among these two data points, and here also among these two data points we have to calculate the cluster center. Again identify the mean. So what is the mean? Again we are getting 1.5 comma 1, 4.5 comma 3.5, same value we are getting. You look at that, previously also for this is 1.5 comma 1, cluster center 1, cluster center 2, 4.5 comma 3.5, so same value. Look at that, 4.5, right? 4.5 comma that is, where is that, this 4.5 comma 3.5. okay, look at this, 4.5 comma 3.5, right? Cluster 2, here cluster 1, 1.5 comma 1. So cluster center is not updated, not changing, okay, not changing, same cluster centers are forming, so it is convergence, okay, convergence towards the not changing the cluster centers. So we can stop the algorithm. Thanks for watching.